We will begin discussing our third type of transformation, and that is a rotation. After this lesson, you should be able to identify rotations, and you should begin to understand how to rotate figures in the coordinate plane. In class, we will do more than one transformation to our figures. First of all, a rotation, or also known as a turn, is a transformation in which a figure is rotated about a point called the center of rotation. And that center of rotation can be multiple things. We're going to focus more on the origin, but we'll also try some other centers of rotation as well in class. The number of degrees a figure rotates is called the angle of rotation. So here's my center of rotation, and I have my figure here, my red figure, and the angle that it rotates. So in this way, it is this example right here, it's rotated 90 degrees in a clockwise fashion. So you guys have to think about those old hand clocks instead of a digital clock, and think about the way that the dials move on the clock. So a clockwise rotation is going to go around this way. So you might want to add a few more arrows. But that would be a clockwise rotation, whereas a counterclockwise rotation is going to go in the opposite direction. So to have a good understanding of where these are, I'm going to have a little example of the coordinate plane, so our x and our y axis. And if I were to start out at 0 up here, if this was my start, it'd be at 0 degrees. And then here would be 90 degrees, as you can see from 0 to this axis right there. That would be a 90-degree angle. Down here would be 180 degrees. And here would be 270. And then I'd go back up to the start, and I'd go full circle, and I'd go 360 degrees. Now this doesn't always mean that 0 is up at the top. It could be, it could be moved around. So it just depends on where you are starting, on where that 0 degrees and where that 180 degrees. It doesn't even have to, you could have it be comparison in that direction. So it doesn't have to have a straight up and down with that, or straight left and right in comparison. But just to get you an idea to get started on thinking of where those 90 degrees or where that turn would be. So that would be a clockwise rotation. Now a counterclockwise rotation, again, if I start up at the top, 0 would be at the top, but then now I'm going to go to the left, and that would be my 90 degrees. Down would still be 180 degrees, and then to the right would be 270, and then back up at the top would be 360 degrees. So it depends on what direction you are rotating, will be the number of degrees that it will be rotating. So in the bottom examples here, it says, tell whether the blue figure is a 180-degree clockwise rotation of the red figure. So we need to imagine this red figure turning 180 degrees. So you could think of it starting out right like here, and then if I turn it around 180 degrees, and it doesn't really matter which direction I go, is it going to look like this blue figure right there? And now you and I are both able to actually take our paper and turn it 180 degrees. So if you turn your paper so that top is now the bottom, that would be 180 degrees. Does that red one right here now look like what the blue one was? So let me go back. Here's my red one, and maybe I'll draw the red one down here so then I can reference it, and then do my flip around. Does that match up? And I know it's kind of in the writing there, but yes, it would match up with that blue one, so it is a 180-degree rotation. Now letter B, same thing, turn your paper around. Can that blue one, so if I were to draw that blue one down here, if I rotate the red one, does that look the same there? And again, even though that's down below there, that does not look the same. So they are not a rotation, 180-degree rotation of that. Since we said no on that one, can you imagine what that figure should be? So it should actually be pointed down instead of pointing up. The next two examples that we are going to do, we are going to rotate on the coordinate plane. So why don't you pause the video and graph triangle DEF, so the original one, and then we can talk about what we're going to do. So here's my triangle DEF. Now I'm going in a clockwise rotation of 90 degrees. So if I am starting out up at the top, say for example, I would want to rotate it 90 degrees, and I would get that angle right there, which I made a little extra angle down below here, and I have my protractor to show you that it is 90 degrees. And this is going to help me to show you how to do this. You will also have protractors available for you to use in class as well. So I'm going to use this pink 90 degree that I made here in order to help me out. So I'm going to move or rotate it so then I have it 90 degrees centered at the origin, and then I'm going to move it so that one of the lines is on that dot or this vertex D, sorry. So I have that 90 degrees, it's on the origin right there, and then I need to figure out, well, where is it going to land over here? So I have this original point is D is -4, +4. So we're still going to use those numbers, 4 and 4, when we do rotations, but it's going to mix it around. So sometimes it'll become positive, sometimes it'll become negative, sometimes our X and our Y switch around. So there's a lot of possibilities. So I don't like teaching rules for this, but there is rules for this, just like in reflections. So what I like to do to imagine this is I'm going over 4 to the left, and I'm going up 4. So I want to go in those same kind of movements, a 4 and a 4, and I need to land on this red line right here. So I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4, and if I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, even though this is just a little bit off, I noticed it slid off my vertex just a little bit. It lands right here at, in this case, +4, +4. So my new D prime is +4, +4. And then I would do the same thing with my next 2 points. So I would move my E. So it's focused on my E, and I would notice, okay, I'm going over 1 and up 2. So I need to do those same kind of movements. So, well, if I go 1, 2, that's not on the pink line. But if I go 2, 1, there it lands right on that pink line. So that is the new arrangement that I want to do for my E. I'm going to go E prime is now a +2 and a +1. So this is a little bit easier to see than this last one because they were dealing with the same numbers. But here, notice what was my Y value is now my X value. And what was my X is now my Y, but it's the opposite of that. Same thing here. It was a -4, now it's a +4. So I should have an idea of what's going on with my F, that my X and my Y switch around and something changes with the sign. So again, I'm going to go and rearrange and move my protractor, my 90-degree angle, so that it is centered at the origin and that it is on my F. Okay, so now it's all set here. So for my F, I'm going over 3 and up 1. So that means I should be going over 1 and up 3, and there it is right on that 90 degree. And there's my new F prime. Again, looking at those points, the 3 goes into the y spot, the 1 goes into the x spot, and it becomes opposite for that y value. You could take your paper and you could rotate it 90 degrees, and we'll do some more hands-on in class of actually rotating it around so that we can see, okay, yes, it is the same congruent shape, and it's just turned or rotated 90 degrees. We're going to do one more example, and so we have triangle ABC. Why don't you go ahead and pause the video and draw triangle ABC. All right, here's my triangle ABC, and so I'm going to this time go in a counterclockwise rotation, and it'll be 180 degrees about the origin. So if I look down here at my protractor, 180 degrees is just a straight line, and this time if I'm going in a counterclockwise rotation, I'm going to be thinking of going down and to the left instead of going to the right. So I'm imagining this right here is going down, and it's going to be somewhere around, this would be 90 degrees here, so I need to go another 90 degrees or a straight line, and it's going to hang out right down here. Okay, so I'm taking that straight line of 180 degrees and I put it on point A, so I'm going to rotate it counterclockwise, and I'm going to move it so that it goes right on that pink line. Again, I'm thinking, okay, 4 and 1. So when I move over here, I'm also going to be using the numbers 4 and 1, but in a little different way. So this time, my numbers, it's going to go right there. So that's going to be my A prime. So my A prime is still using those numbers, positive 4, a 4 and a 1, but this time it's going to become positive 4 and a negative 1. So our numbers change around that way. So we keep it the 4, but it becomes a positive, the opposite. It was a positive 1, now it becomes a negative 1. We should see that same pattern going on with the other letters as well. I moved my line so that that line was now centered at the origin and going through C. And so again, I'm 2, 1, and I'm going to use those numbers 2, 1 again. This time I'm going to go to the right 2 and down 1 in order to hit that line right there. And it doesn't matter that I'm not doing this alphabetically anymore. And you should notice in the last one, these were straight across from each other. These are still straight across from each other. I have my last point all set up. So the B was over to the left 1 and up 4. So now I'm going to do that same kind of fashion, except for I'm going to go to the right 1 and down 4. And there's where it meets that line. So B prime. Again, it just changes the sign of each. And then I'm going to connect my dots to make my 180 degree turn there. And I know this can be really difficult. Hopefully visually you can kind of see what was going on there, but we're going to do a lot of hands-on practice of this and getting protractors out and different things to help us better do the rotations there. So if you're a little frustrated right now, just take a little deep breath and we'll do lots of practice in class. So for your summarize, just explain the difference between a 90 degree, 180 degree, and 270 degree turn, and also describe the difference between rotating clockwise versus counterclockwise. In your question, you're just going to answer, is the blue figure a rotation of the red figure about the origin? If it is, see if you can figure out the direction and the angle of rotation. So is it 180 degrees in the clockwise direction, or is it 90 degrees in the counterclockwise direction? And for these guys, there is actually more than one correct answer here. So it just depends on the way that you were thinking, because maybe you were thinking clockwise and somebody else is thinking counterclockwise, and it can actually be two answers that are the same answer.